All right, everybody. Welcome to episode 38 of the Fantasy Timeline, a proud member of the Dynasty Addicts Podcast Network. So, if you're watching us live, you see a little bit of a different face. Bill is taking the week off. He's going to do a little bit of resting, relaxing, and recharging the batteries. But I'm really happy that I found not only any replacement, but I found a great replacement. If you guys remember a few weeks ago, we had Drew on with us. He was kind of our third host, and Bill and I thought, hey, why don't we just get him on to fill in for Bill this week? So everybody, welcome Drew. Drew, how you doing, man?
I'm good. Excited to be back. It's been fun to watch the timeline chat in the Eliminator and just watch all this stuff build up over the last few days. So
Yeah, and it's been crazy because we were talking a little bit before we jumped on live, and I said to Drew, Drew, man, it's a hell of a week to be the guest co-host because we have a ton of news. Your teams are going to camp, and now you're really starting to hear some news. So we're going to get into it right now. So the first thing, and of course, Bill and I always joke around that, some kind of big news item usually breaks the morning, Thursday morning after we do our show. And of course, Washington, the Washington NFL team, is going to use Washington Football Team as their name for the 2020 season. Glad the PR department really put it together. They worked long hours and they came up with an interesting name that no one will ever forget. So they're taking their old logo off of the helmets, and it's just going to be player numbers on the helmets. It's going to look a lot like a college football team. So that's good because they kind of play like the college football team as well. But yeah, Drew, I don't think there's much we got to worry about with that. So, as we say in the business, we're going to segue here to a Washington Football Team player. Alex Smith has been cleared for all football activities, which, I mean, if you watched that game and saw that injury, it was gruesome. I mean, even the recovery from it was gruesome. So I'm glad, just on a personal level, that he is back, that he is, that he can play football again. Drew, he is still part of the Washington Football Team roster. So how many games do you think he might play this year?
Man, that's tough. I'm with you. I'm pulling for the guy. I've liked him all along. I watched the ESPN special, and it was amazing to see all the surgeries, all the work, the ups and downs, and I hope he gets to finish out the way he wants to finish on his own terms. Crazy year overall, but if we were to have a full season, man, that's tough. I think he'd be lucky to see maybe 3 games out of the season. It really depends on how Haskins does, how he shapes up. He's still got to compete with Kyle Allen there. So, I don't know if they give him the veteran courtesy at some point and, kind of close the loop on that story and let him go out the last few games if they're really out of it. But yeah, I don't see him making a meaningful impact in too many games this year.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think what you almost have to hope for is that a quarterback, that's poor wording. You don't hope that another quarterback goes down, but Alex Smith, I think, needs to be traded somewhere or released and picked up somewhere else where maybe there's a better shot to. So we're going from one team here to all of the NFL. So Tom Pelissero from the NFL Network detailed the opt-outs. So there are 2 types of opt-outs, which are irrevocable and due 7 days from the NFLPA deal being finalized, which I don't know if it's actually been finalized yet. But pretty much, guys that are high risk, that have some kind of pre-existing condition that can make them susceptible to COVID, would get $350,000 with no offset and an accrued or credited season, which goes towards the pension and the medical program and everything that's a part of being in the NFL. Or the voluntary opt-out, which is $150,000. Now, their season wouldn't accrue, so that's interesting. But either way, if you take the opt-out, your contract tolls, which means you're paused for a year and you come back next year kind of in the same spot you were in this year. So we've seen some voluntary opt-outs already. We've seen Marquise Goodwin opt out, Laurent Duvernay-Tardif from the Kansas City Chiefs, who is an actual doctor, saying that if he's going to risk catching COVID, he wants to do it helping people, which is a story that was way underreported all over Twitter, but didn't really see it in a lot of other major media outlets. And probably the biggest one that just broke a few hours before we came on, Damian Williams of the Kansas City Chiefs, who said he's opting out as well. So, some crazy stuff. I mean, Drew and I were also talking about this before we jumped on. It looks like if we thought the CEH hype didn't hit a fever pitch, it's going to now with Damian Williams out of the way. Drew, we were talking about this earlier, but with a guy like CEH, are you running out there to grab him, or are you kind of staying pat and seeing what else might happen?
If I don't have him rostered in the league, I doubt I'm willing to pay what it's going to take to get him at this point. I was joking with Josh earlier that I co-own or co-manage a team with a buddy from a home league as well, who has got CEH on his independent roster, and we've also got him in our co-owned team. And there's no way we're even going to sell him, I don't think, because there's so much hype out there, which it's hard to argue against it because Andy Reid has such a good history with running backs in his system. I mean, you watch what Kareem Hunt did a few years ago when he got his opportunity. I think he fumbled his first carry, and then the rest was history until he hit his poor decision streak. But the guy has a system in place that produces solid running backs. So hard to argue against CEH success. But yeah, I'm not going out and paying what most people are asking. I wasn't paying what they were asking before the news. And I told you earlier, I'm more of a JT guy anyways, but yeah, I think I saw a couple guys on Twitter talking about it shouldn't change a whole lot, maybe a little bit for this year, because I think most of the folks that were on his bandwagon assumed that he's going to get that role eventually anyways. It was just a matter of time before he overtook Williams. So, I think if rational heads prevail here, the price shouldn't shoot up too high for too long. But yeah, I think he'll be hard to get.
Yeah, and it's funny because we pride ourselves as dynasty players that we're this patient group of people that come up with a plan to put a team together to win championships. And the funny part is that we might even be more reactionary than other keeper or redraft players when we hear news like this, because I'm sure we're going to start seeing over the next coming days, people that are selling CEH for just massive hauls. I saw a trade where someone traded Nick Chubb and a first to get CEH, a second and a third, which is, in my mind, crazy. I'm high on Nick Chubb, so that could be clouding my thought process on that a little bit. But to get a, second tier running back and a first round pick for CEH, who we project he will do well in the league, but hasn't done it yet. He hasn't stepped onto a field, hasn't caught a ball, hasn't, broken a runoff. We're, not what I'll be doing, but I'm with you as well. I'm a big JT fan. I had JT over CEH the entire time. So it's not going to change now. And finally, last but not least, Tom Pelissero reported that Justin Jefferson was placed on the COVID-19 list, and then Pro Football Talk reported that Keyshawn Vaughn was placed on the COVID-19 list. And the thing to remember with that COVID-19 list is doesn't necessarily mean that they have COVID-19. They just may have been in the vicinity of someone who has had COVID-19. So I think, there's been a lot of discussions about whether the NFL plan is detailed enough, if they're doing enough. But this is one thing that I think they're doing right. They're not just waiting for a positive test to kind of put players on this COVID-19. They're tracking, and if they find that a player has been in contact with someone who has COVID-19, they're putting them on this list as a precaution. So I think that's one thing that they are doing right. So, Drew, we knocked out probably the most news that we have done, I think, since the season, probably, maybe since the draft. But I mean, we were talking about this earlier. There were weeks where Bill and I were struggling to find news. So this week was chock full of it. And as you said, Drew, I'm sure over the next coming days, we're going to start hearing about more and more players that are going to be opting out. So it should be interesting to keep our eyes on that.
But, I want to know what does Bill know that we don't, that he took this week off so far in advance?
I guess the news was too much for him. He thought he was going to be at a disadvantage going through the mountains of news that came out this week. So he decided, maybe wisely, to take the week off and let us try to dig through it all. But now we have the news out of the way. We're going to go to what we saw on the timeline. And the first one, this is actually something you put on the timeline. We've been seeing workout hype videos. Alex Smith had one a couple weeks ago. Darius Geis is telling everybody that he's not playing anymore. Even CMC last year with the muscle posing picture. How much does seeing these workout clips influence your opinion and expectation from players? And I actually added a tweet on here from Monarch at Monarch Sport. This tweet came out on Tuesday or yesterday, if for people who speak correctly. Great to get a full workout in with Danny Amendola. Easy to see why this lion stays at the top of the food chain. Okay. That's something we can say. So yeah, Drew, first of all, I'll ask, when you see these type of videos, do you get all hot and bothered? And, if you don't, why do you think other people do?
Hard to speculate for other folks. I'll say in general, of course, I wish I had taken CMC's shirtless photo more seriously last year and drafted him in redraft. But typically no, I don't put a lot of stock in it. I mean, even watching Saquon this week, I think he duplicated Christian Wirf's pool jump, which I don't think anybody would ever doubt that Saquon could jump out of 10 feet of water if he wanted to with those quads. But I remember last year too, the Browns having so much hype, and then watching OBJ in camp making one-handed catches and highlight catches in the back of the end zone, being reunited with Landry and stuff. And I think it feels good. And as a dynasty player, I like to see flashy things like that happen. If anything, maybe I can validate some of the hype that I'm trying to put on some of my players if I'm trying to trade them or something. But yeah, I'm not sure where. I think we're all impressed by the specimen of the NFL. These guys are just world-class athletes that have committed so much of their life to being in prime condition to play such a violent game. So to see some amazing things like that is really cool. And of course, social media makes it so much more available these days. And I've been fortunate enough to see a few camps over the summer, and to see some of it live is even more impressive. And it's like, you don't have the replay and you just imagine that replay in your head of, holy cow, what just happened? But yeah, overall, I don't get too excited by the videos they put out there. I certainly hope the best for some of these guys are on the mend. Again, like Darius Geis, I'm not real high on him because of his injury history. I don't love maybe it's because I'm lower on the Washington medical staff in general after seeing some of the work they've been a part of the last couple of years. But watching him go and yeah, the guy's got massive hamstrings that he's been working on for burst and speed. I'm still probably not drafting him anywhere ahead or even at his ADP right now.
Yeah, and it's funny because we see these videos and we're just so impressed, and we're like, oh man, we can't believe that this guy did this, which is funny because I mean, don't we see these players every week just do amazing things? I don't know why we think all of a sudden in the summer they just can't do those things anymore. But I mean, hey, whatever. Yeah, the one that sticks out in my mind is the Darius Geis one. I mean, I understand why that guy's knees can't survive because the just size and muscle sculpture on his legs are insane. I mean, it looks like an action figure that you would buy in a store. The way the muscles are detailed, it's crazy. I'm pulling for him again as a person. I'm with you. I'm lower on Geis because of the injury history. I think if he can't stay healthy for the majority of the season, I think he is going to be a guy that you can get on the cheap that can possibly win you your league. But unfortunately, again, that's a big if. Washington has, I think, hired mostly new medical staff since Ron Rivera has got to town. So we don't know much about them yet. I mean, they can't be worse than the guys that were there previous. I mean, just if you don't know what we're talking about, just Google Washington football team medical staff. I'm sure you can find tons of articles about how they, really made some bonehead decisions on some of their own players. So, yeah. I think the hype video is just, we don't have anything this time of year. We see these things, we get excited, and then we go out and again, as much as dynasty players pride themselves at being slow and methodical, a lot of times the opposite is true. So yeah, I think that's what a lot of it has to do with. We see something shiny. We haven't seen something shiny for a long time, and then we
gotta have it.
Yeah, we go out, we try to buy it. So that's that. That was a good one. And then your next one here, which was a really good idea. We started seeing these my guy tweets and these buy, sell, bust tweets, and we decided to play the game ourselves a little bit. So this is from Dear Mr. Fantasy at Dear Mr. Fantasy FB. Of my guy for every position. So we'll state who Mr. Fantasy had, and then we'll kind of alternate on who we have. So Mr. Fantasy's my guy at the quarterback position is Joe Burrow. I have Dak, and the reason, a lot of people are like, well, Dak is, not a hot, it's not a surprising choice. But I'm talking about Dak getting into the top 2, not Dak being in the top 5. Dallas has just put a lot of weapons there. I mean, they re-signed Amari Cooper. Michael Gallup pretty much had Amari Cooper's stats. Then they go ahead in the first round and draft CeeDee Lamb. They have Saquon, or not Saquon, oh my God. They have Zeke Elliott, Blake Jarwin. And if you look at how analysts are ranking these guys, I mean, people are calling Jarwin a top 10 tight end, Zeke a top 5 running back. Lamb is supposed to be, at least Randall Cobb, if not better. And then obviously the big 2. So I think that with Mike McCarthy there now. It looks like they want to use Kellen Moore's offense for the entire year and just not the first month of the season. It could be big time for Dak, and he runs a little bit. He's not Tom Brady back there. He's not an immobile guy. So, gets himself a handful of touchdowns on the ground, and a few hundred yards rushing just helps that out. So that's kind of why I have Dak there, because I don't think of Dak as a top 5 guy. I think he could actually jump into that kind of top 2 range. Drew, who's your my guy at the quarterback position?
I went with somebody a little bit lower who I think for me, I'm hoping I can get a little bit cheaper right now. I'm taking Baker. I've got him across a couple of leagues rostered, but similar. He's got the weapons around him. I mean, they just signed Austin Hooper to the biggest tight end deal. He's got Landry, who hopefully mends on the shorter end of his timeline for his work. OBJ is second year in the system. You've got Chubb and Hunt both there, which I know you said you're a little higher on Nick Chubb, which I think long term we'll see what happens if Hunt leaves town after the season. And I mean, Chubb is right back up there in the top 3-4 guys if he's got a solo show. Probably the thing that scares me the most between new system again this year, but hopefully you can't get any worse than what he had the last 2 years for coaching. And then you just have a tough division. So a couple of tough defenses in Pittsburgh and Baltimore. But I mean, heck, even last year in their dysfunction, they beat Baltimore once on the road, right? So it's doable. He's got the talent. He's got the swagger to do it. I don't think I'm projecting him to be in the top 2 or 3. I'd love to see him in the 6 to 8 range would be a success for me this year. If he comes out and he gets to throw the ball as much as he can, I think he'll get some good, safe play action where he succeeds a lot. And then dump offs with Hunt there, who can catch the ball and take it to the house from almost anywhere on the field. So I like Baker at his price. I mean, I would love to have Dak. My father-in-law is in the league with me, and he drafted Dak in our startup a little bit earlier. And man, now he looks really smart now. And yeah, so I like Dak too. I think he could have a big. I don't know. I don't know what you were thinking, but I mean, I don't think it's outside of the realm of possibility to get 5,000 yards, 40 touchdowns out of him.
Yeah, and that's kind of where I have him at, to bring him into that top 2. But of course, Bill tells us he's going to take a break, but then he jumps on and throws this out here. So of course, Josh talking Cowboys while I'm gone. Someone brought up the fact that the Cowboys may not be able to franchise Dak next season with the salary cap dropping. Thoughts? So, yeah, look, from everything I've heard, it's going to be about $38 million if the Cowboys decide to franchise Dak again. Now, they could obviously come to a deal. They could come to terms, and maybe they can make that hit in 2021 a little bit smaller to account for the cap dropping. I saw this somewhere, and I wish I could remember where it was, but it looks like the league is going to spread out whatever hit happens this year over the next 4 years. So there might not be as massive as a salary cap drop as we all initially thought there would be. But yeah, there's probably going to be a drop, and the good teams, and I sometimes put the Cowboys in that category and sometimes don't, depending on what they do, understand how to work the salary cap to sign their players. There's an article about the Kansas City Chiefs who had $177 in cap space before they signed Patrick Mahomes to a $500 million deal. So the salary cap is kind of a number that can be worked and massaged and figured out to get the guys that you need. And then they also signed one of their defensive guys to a $70 or $80 million deal after that. So Chris Jones, I believe. So
Jones, yep.
Yeah. So yes, the cap will probably be going down next year, but if the Cowboys are so inclined, they can either franchise tag Dak or sign him to an actual contract while figuring out how to magically make the cap work for them. So,
Yeah,
Bill,
it's accounting.
Yeah, I appreciate you, Bill, making us think. We're going to go to the next one now. So, Mr. Fantasy had Alvin Kamara as his my guy. Oh,
Sorry about that.
okay. I thought it was me, so could have been. So, who do you have at running back as your guy?
Man, I put this together a couple of days ago before today's news, but so I'm going to stick to my guns here. Same division as CEH, but I've got Austin Eckler. I think everybody's trying to project where the Melvin Gordon touches are going to go, what's going to happen with Tyrod and or Herbert there. But he showed what he could do last year in the 8 games without Melvin Gordon. I got to think that either of those guys, Tyrod or Herbert, can't do much worse for him than whatever the shell of Phillip Rivers was last year. So I like him a lot this year. I think I guess maybe I'm buying into the hype on social with him. He's putting all these tweets out there, inviting his doubters and stuff. I'm not one to doubt the guy. What's funny is that I was looking back through some of my old trades in another dynasty league, and 1 year I sold him, and gosh, I don't even know what I sold him to the Melvin Gordon owner at that point. I think this was 3 years ago, and something else for that guy's 2nd round pick.
Oh.
But yeah, Eckler, I like the guy. I like his story. I like the way that he plays, and I think he's in a prime slot. He's going to be really the central focus of that offense, I think, to start. And as long as he can hold up, I think he'll do good things for people who took a chance on him this year.
And I think that's a great pick. If you listen to the fantasy footballers, they call him Awesome Eckler. So I think that's a great pick. Every study done shows that those pass catching running backs just give you so much more. What is it? A reception is worth twice as much as a rush or something like that. Once you break it down. And while I say that, I'm going to then turn around and say that my guy is Nick Chubb, a guy who doesn't catch the ball.
He can, though. He can.
Yeah. The reason why I'm high on Chubb, and again, I'm not really stretching out there and picking a guy who I think a lot of people have in their top 10 to 15 range, but there's a lot of fear about Kareem Hunt, and I understand why people have that fear. They saw what happened once Kareem Hunt came back. They saw not only what Kareem Hunt did, but how it affected Nick Chubb, and people are worried about that. And yes, I have a slight worry about that, but I also remember that we're not talking about the same offense. Freddie Kitchens is gone. We have God, I'm forgetting his name right now. Forgive me, the new coach of the Browns.
Stefanski.
Yes, thank you, Kevin Stefanski. And we saw that offense in Minnesota. Was it an elite offense? No, it wasn't. But Adam Thielen did well in the offense. Stephon Diggs did well in the offense. Dalvin Cook did well in the offense. Alexander Mattison got some time to shine in that offense. It even brought out a good game or two out of Kyle Rudolph. So there are a ton of weapons in wow, I'm not having a good day today with Cleveland. I don't know. My brain's going on me right now. A lot of weapons in Cleveland. We talked about a lot of them earlier, but I think Stefanski is going to find a way to use both Chubb and Hunt to their maximum efficiency. And I think we're going to see a lot of good things from Chubb this year. So Chubb is my guy for those reasons. Awesome Eckler is your guy. Love that pick. I think it's going to be another star-studded year. And I didn't feel that way at the beginning of the offseason. I thought it was a lot of hype. But kind of looking at everything that the Chargers have done, it really seems like they're kind of gearing up to have Awesome Eckler as maybe the centerpiece or one of the centerpieces of that offense. So love that pick. So we're going to jump to the wide receiver now. Mr. Fantasy has A.J. Brown as his my guy. I have Michael Gallup. This is one where I went off the beaten path, and I know Bill is probably hanging out and going, "Oh, another Cowboy, of course." But CeeDee Lamb was drafted, and a lot of people just pretended that Michael Gallup didn't have a good year, that he was a guy that was just, you know, just hanging out, just, hey, I'm here, I'm having a good time, just playing some football. Uh, Michael Gallup had 1,107 yards and 6 touchdowns. Pretty good. I mean, over over 1,000 yards, a half dozen touchdowns, and really there were a lot of games that Amari Cooper was hurt. He was out there playing, but he was more of a decoy, and Michael Gallup was the guy. Now we're
Yep.
going to go into an offense where not only do we have to account for Amari Cooper, we have to account for CeeDee Lamb. I mean, I think that could open things up for him even more. And if Amari is out or he's out there as a decoy, that other guy is still there that you have to make sure
Yep.
your defense is accounting for. So I expect to see very similar numbers from Michael Gallup this year, and he's not being taken in a spot that you're expecting over 1,000 yards and 6 to 8 touchdowns. So give me Michael Gallup. That's my guy. I think he's going to ball out again, and I think the people who own him are going to have a good time. Drew, who's your my guy at the wide receiver position?
Yeah, it kind of branches off what you were talking about. For wide receiver this year, I'm all in on guys that have an established rapport, that are in the same system. I think if I'm looking for success at the wide receiver position, I want my first wide receiver 1 and 2 guys to be established in that system and have a track record. So I picked Julio. I think a lot of people are starting to disrespect him. People started disrespecting him 2 years ago once he hit 30. But the guy is still elite. He's got a huge contract. He's got the longest rapport with any other quarterback out there, with Matt Ryan, which I think a lot of people are sleeping on Matt Ryan this year as well. But a lot of Ridley love, which is fine. If defense wants to shade to Ridley, the young and up and coming star, and people are high on Hayden Hurst, which is great. Gurley is there for whatever he can do. But I really like Julio this year. I think he is going to put up maybe a not so quiet, excellent year. And Gallup last year, man, he was a couple of steps away from 2 or 3 more big touchdown plays that people forget about too. So he could have easily come up with 1,200 yards and 8 touchdowns last year.
Yeah, and I love your Julio there. The only thing we ever complain about, I mean, besides the age, which is ridiculous, I don't even entertain those conversations. But the only thing that we really complain about with Julio is the touchdowns. But last year, almost 1,400 yards, a half dozen touchdowns, and he does it every year. And you know what? You could, our main man, friend of the show, my buddy, Dynasty Outhouse, loves Calvin Ridley. Guess what? Calvin Ridley, 866 yards, 7 touchdowns. He gets his too. Julio doesn't take away from him. Calvin Ridley doesn't take away from Julio. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that offense in a second. But yeah, I love that pick, and I think you brought up a very good point, talking about familiarity, especially with the craziness that's going on this year. I mean, no kind of mini camps, no kind of, rookie camps, none of that stuff. So having guys that are familiar with their quarterbacks, with the other receivers on their team, with, their offensive line, I think those guys are going to come in at an advantage because they know the system. There's not a new head coach. There's not a new offense to learn. There's not new terminology. There's not new guys, that are going to be on the field with you. Julio knows what Matt Ryan's going to do. Matt Ryan knows what Julio's going to do. Julio and Calvin Ridley know what they're going to do on certain plays and where to be. And that's, I think, going to be vitally important this year because, while other guys have to learn and, learn the playbook, learn the terminology, learn what their quarterback likes and dislikes, those guys already know. They're just out there, feet hitting the ground and they're running. So I love your pick. So last but definitely not least, Mr. Fantasy's my guy is Hayden Hurst at the tight end position. Drew, tight ends, who are you liking?
I was swayed by my rosters here. I've got Noah Fant in there. I've got him in so many of my rosters. I wanted him in Scott Fishbowl and I missed out on him. Athletic freak, man. When he popped last year in a couple of games, you saw the athleticism compared to everybody else on the field. I know they brought in Alberto, who has some history with Drew Lock, and people are questioning Drew Lock's ability to sustain an offense. And I mean, he's surrounded by other weapons, sure, but I think some of that, whatever familiarity might be there, I'm hoping they can build on that. You got Cortland Sutton, who's taken a lot of attention. They've got Melvin Gordon there now, so a lot of other pieces people have to account for. Linebackers are going to have to get mismatched in a number of ways. So you're going to put the mismatch on Gordon, who can catch. You're going to put the mismatch on Fant. So I'm really hoping for, I don't even know if a breakout is the right term, just another step forward. I'd love to see him finish, maybe 600 yards and half a dozen touchdowns, become a red zone threat, maybe 8 touchdowns, something like that. I know Gordon's going to get his, but just to see that growth, because I know I've been a Fant truther. I took him, or I wanted him over Hawkinson last year when they came out in the rookie drafts. But yeah, that's where I'm putting my stake down this year. Is I'm all in on Fant across the board.
Wow, love that pick. Drew Lock. Bill doesn't like Drew Lock. I like Lock more than Bill does. But again, we just talked about this. It's about having that familiarity, being on the field with the guy, playing in games with guys. And there are a lot of new weapons in Denver. I mean, they signed Melvin Gordon as a free agent. They draft KJ Hamler. They draft Jerry Jeudy. They draft Albert O. Three of those guys, are rookies. So not only do they have to get used to NFL game speed and how fast and strong everyone that's on the field against them is, but they're learning a new playbook. They're learning new terminology. They all have to figure out what Drew Lock likes and dislikes. No Fant, he knows already. They wasn't a ton of games, but they have a handful of games. They've practiced with each other. They have a lot of experience with each other. And all 4 of your guys are guys that have been there, same system, same guys around them. And I think that's going to be vital. My guy at the tight end, I'm the only one, and this is the first position that I strayed away from stay with the guy who's on the team. I actually went with Mr. Fantasy's guy here, Hayden Hurst. Yes, I know he's older. He's an older man. But the Falcons gave up a 2nd-round pick to get him. You don't just give up a 2nd-round pick unless you feel like the person that you're getting in return can be a major contributor on your team. And I don't think he is going to replicate Austin Hooper's numbers, not year 1 anyway. But if he gives you 75-80% of Austin Hooper, are you mad about that? That probably puts him in that tight end 6 to 9 range. It's not a bad place to be because honestly, once you get past the top 3 or 4, it's all a crapshoot anyway at the tight end position. So why not get a guy that can slot into that 6 to 9 and a guy that you don't really have to worry about for week to week? I like Hayden Hurst this year. Yes, he has to learn a brand new offense. We talked about this. Could be a little rough for him, but I do think he is talented. He was a big time player at I believe he played at South Carolina, so he was big time there. And I think that not being in the shadow of Mark Andrews is going to allow him to come out and shine. So we hit all four of our guys. I think Drew, I love your guys and I love the reasoning for your guys. I think we knocked this one out of the park.
Love it.
So this next one is from Jimmy Barnhart at Jimmy_Barnhart. Which running back would you rather have on your dynasty team? So we're going to give you three choices, and Drew, you'll go first here. So we have Raheem Mostert, Keyshawn Vaughn, or Darius Geis. Who do you want on your team?
Man, that is tough. They all have perks. It's nice knowing that Mostert just came to terms with San Francisco, which has to give you some confidence, at least in the near term. Man, gun to my head, if I had to, I would probably take Darius Geis and trust that the talent's there, hope that he's past his injury woes. And like you said earlier, I think he's got league-winning talent if he can stay on the field and stay healthy. I don't know that. I know Mostert definitely helped people last year. Expecting him to reproduce that is, I think, a little tough for me to get on board with. And Keyshawn Vaughn's just he's an older rookie that we don't know much about in the NFL level. So I would probably have to take my chances with Geis, and I like the guy in general too. So hard not to roster a guy that you're pulling for.
Yeah, and we're gonna go 2 for 2 here. And actually, this was a poll on Twitter, and Darius Geis got over 52% of the vote. So we're definitely in the majority here. I agree with you. I think Geis has by far the highest upside. Talent has never been a question with Darius Geis, and I think sometimes when people hear me talk about Darius Geis, they think I'm slamming him from a talent perspective. It's the furthest thing from the truth. My issue with him is health, and that's it. If he stays healthy, I won't have him on any of my teams, but he's going to help a lot of people and probably help a lot of people in games that I have to play him in. So, you know, that's that. Raheem Mostert, I have been one of the loudest proponents. Friend of the show, Two Drink, calls him Raheem No Start because before he ended up in San Francisco, that dude didn't start. He's a byproduct of the Shanahan system. I hate to say it. When he was talking about being traded, it was obvious nobody was going to trade for him because he's a product of the system. That's not a bad thing. But let's face it, we've seen it every year since Shanahan got to town. They're going to use 3 or 4 guys. I mean, we've seen Matt Breida. We've seen all those guys. I don't even want
Jeffrey Wilson.
Jeff Wilson. I mean, my name is Jeff. He's out there vulturing touchdowns. Tevin Coleman is out there. You know, God knows Shanahan loves Jet McKinnon because that dude hasn't played in 2 years and they still want to keep paying him money. So obviously this is not a situation they could have cut McKinnon this year. And I think with no cap hit. If I'm wrong about that, I apologize. But they could have cut him. They kept him. So that's really all I need to know about Raheem Mostert. And yes, I know sometimes NFL teams can find the diamond in the rough, but 6, 7, 8 other teams cut Raheem Mostert. So, you know, I don't think they're all wrong. Maybe a couple of them were wrong, but I don't think they're all wrong. And I think this is a Shanahan system. Raheem Mostert might be the guy that starts the season, but we often forget we talk about Raheem Mostert's playoff run. But that was because Tevin Coleman was hurt. Yeah. And when Tevin Coleman played during that same playoff stretch, he performed really well too. So we have to, I think, temper expectation with him a lot. And like you said, Keyshawn Vaughn is a rookie. He's unfortunately on the COVID-19 list right now. I don't know if that means he has it or he was just in contact with someone who may have had it. But, again, if that's something he had, we have no idea how that's going to affect him. On top of the fact that he's a rookie in a new team, and Tom Brady is his quarterback, and a lot of people say Tom Brady is not an easy person to please. So, yeah, I'm with you. I'm going Geis. I think even if all these guys are in perfect situations, I think the upside for Geis is just way more massive than it is for the other two. So hope we helped you out with that one, Jimmy. And we're gonna go on to the next one. So this is from Fantasy Mike at Fantasy Mike BBF. What is one real life NFL trade that you would love to see happen for fantasy purposes? So Fantasy Mike said David Njoku to Washington, which I think is a great one because right now, something else Bill and I don't agree on. I think Thaddeus Moss is in first place, and that's not to say that there are a lot of great players in that race, but I mean, the incumbent is Jeremy Sprinkle. So that's what that tight end position in Washington looks like right now. David Njoku would come there and he would automatically be the second best weapon in the passing game. So that would be a great NFL trade that we could see happen. What about you, Drew? What trade would you like to see for fantasy purposes?
Oh man, if I could have my wish, I would love to see Royce Freeman get another shot somewhere. I would love to see him get a shot in a place like New England. Honestly, I'd be fine if he ended up in the mix behind CEH in Kansas City. Now with that news, just see if he could replace Damian Williams there. But place like New England or down in Jacksonville, who knows what's going to happen with Fournette long term? They could probably get Freeman pretty cheap, still on his rookie contract, or a place like the Seahawks where they can't keep a guy healthy and just kind of bide his time and wait his turn. And that's the other thing too is, I mean, who knows with all the COVID stuff this year? I think a lot of guys are going to get some opportunities. So going back to the beginning, even then, maybe Alex Smith gets a shot because a couple of guys ahead of him end up on the COVID list and have to quarantine for 2 or 3 weeks. He gets to do a couple of spot starts, but yeah, I'd love to see Royce. I know he came out with some pretty high draft capital, and people assumed that he was going to take the job in Denver. And kudos to Lindsey coming out undrafted and making that his own for as long as he had it. But that's probably the one that I would like to see the most is really see what Royce Freeman could do. So I always reply whenever somebody says Freeman to fill in the blank because I know they're all talking about Devontae, but I secretly hope it's Royce.
So before I throw mine out there, our man friend of the show, FF Swirly, Allen Robinson to literally anywhere else, please. Yeah, Allen Robinson hasn't had a good quarterback since ever.
Cool.
He didn't have any in college. He sure as heck hasn't had any in the pros. But the man produces. I mean, I couldn't imagine if he went to, let's just say, Green Bay and had Aaron Rodgers throwing him the ball, plus Devontae Adams taking pressure off. I mean, it would be crazy, and you could list, probably another 15 teams where you could imagine, hell, if he went to Houston with the Texans and became the number one there with all the speed options they have, again, to take that pressure off, it would be great. So in the vein of our friend FF Swirly, I am going to go with Kyle Rudolph to literally anywhere. I want to see Irv Smith ball out, man. I this is something that Bill and I do agree on. We both love Irv Smith, and actually, I think everyone on the DAT network is in an agreement that we love Irv Smith. I think the guy could be a star, and I think the only thing that possibly is dimming that star just a little bit at this point in time is the fact that Kyle Rudolph is there. Kyle Rudolph is a very serviceable player. He can catch the ball. He's a great blocker. We do see 1 or 2 games a year where he is highlighted and he does his job. I have nothing against Kyle Rudolph personally, but man, if he could just get traded anywhere else and let the bright light of Irv Smith shine, I would be happy. I have Irv on quite a few teams, and I'm just waiting for that point where he can shine and he can show everyone what he is all about. So, Drew, I know that it looks like the sheet here is empty, but there is one more tweet that I want to talk about here. Our buddy, friend of the show, and also that member, Dustin Church, had a trade, and it was kind of crazy because the trade that he made triggered all of Twitter. It was one of the strangest things that I've ever seen in all of my time doing this show. So I want to talk about it with you and see about see what you think. So this is from our buddy Dustin Church at Dynasty Junkie FF. And as a shameless plug, if you guys are listening to us and you're not listening to the Dynasty Junkies, they're our Dat Network brothers, but they put on a damn good show. You should definitely check them out, subscribe, rate and review, because they're awesome. So Dustin tweeted, use the Dalvin Cook reporting news today. Now, this was the news that he was reporting to camp. There was a lot of back and forth. Was he reporting? Wasn't he reporting? Mm-hmm. To sell him in a tight end premium, 1.75 PPR. He traded him away for Mark Andrews, Sony Michel, and Miles Boykin. So let me just repeat that so you make sure you got all the pieces right. So he traded away Dalvin Cook, got himself Mark Andrews, Sony Michel, and Miles Boykin. Drew, what do you think about that deal?
Man, I voted on that, and I took the package side, kind of knee jerk. I saw the tight end premium. I've got hopes for Miles Boykin as well. I could take or leave Sony Michel. I think if he has a few good games this year, people will be happy. He doesn't have a whole lot of competition for the early downs there. You got James White. They restructured Rex Burkhead, I guess. So kind of the usual suspects in their backfield. But it's tough. I've seen people go on both sides of Dalvin. I took a chance on him last year in redraft and was happy for most of the year until playoff time came around. I know most of his injuries have not been, or his recent injury, I guess, was his shoulder. He's had some lower leg or knee injuries in the past, which don't excite me for a running back. He's done well in the system. I don't know. I still think I would take the youth and Andrews and the tight end premium. Even if he opts out, I think he's another candidate this year that could pretty easily opt out with some of his pre-existing conditions. You lose this year. I've seen some good articles on Miles Boykin as coming on as a good second-year sleeper. Maybe depending on some of the other settings, if it's deeper rosters, then of course I take the depth. If you got to start 10, 11, 12 guys, I'll take the depth for sure. If it's shorter starting, then maybe you want that stud running back. But I'll take the Andrew side and tight end premium.
And it's funny because this trade kind of weaves into one of the bylines of this entire episode, and that is, as dynasty players, we say that we are the most patient people, but we're really not. We're actually one of the most impatient groups here. and I wanted to bring up this trade because I mean, some of the comments were, "This is the worst trade I've ever seen. You got fleeced."
Mhm.
A lot of hate. Oh,
Hey, look
oh,
at this.
it's Bill. Bill coming out of retirement for the last 5 to 10 minutes of the show. What's going on, Bill?
What's up, guys? Just thought I would listen to the rest of the show before editing.
Do you want us to send you out? with a
Nah, I'll just
band?
stay here and listen.
All right, perfect. So, and I was confused onto why there was all the hate for this deal. First of all, worst trade ever. You obviously
way.
haven't been playing Dynasty long enough if this is the worst trade you've ever seen.
No.
I've seen some bad trades. I've made some bad trades. This is not a bad trade. Now, could he have gotten more? Yes, I do agree. I think he could have gotten more. But I understand the thought process behind it. You got a guy, I think his ADP in DLF right now is like he's going as running back 4. I mean, look, the guy has never played a 16-game season. I mean,
Yep.
we were talking about this with other players who are injury prone, and Darius Geis. We're hoping he can put it together, but he hasn't done it in 4 years. He has not played 16 games, and we're talking about a tight end premium league, which I don't know if everyone who made a smart comment read that part of it, because that 1.75, yes, I understand Mark Andrews is not a volume receiving tight end like someone kind of like Zach Ertz is, but that's really helpful. 1.75 is really helpful at the tight end position. Sony Michel, a lot of people dislike Sony Michel. Understand why. But Sony Michel kind of hovers in that, top 24 running back. Some weeks it's ugly. I have him on teams. I understand it's ugly. It doesn't look good. And some weeks, it's okay. It looks a little bit better. He hardly ever gives you the whoa week where you're like, man, he went for 120 and 2 touchdowns and caught 3 balls for 50 yards. He doesn't give you those type of games. But he's still in that running back 2 range. And then Miles Boykin, he's a lottery ticket. I don't have a lot of faith in him, but I mean, you can make a reasonable argument that he produces as a low-end flex receiver this year. So really, you're getting that for, running back 4, a guy who, let's face it, was talking about holding out. Who knows where he ends up next season? And Bill and I spoke about this last week. There are a lot of guys who were going to be in the running back free agent pool next year. And you know what? Not everyone is going to get a big time deal. Not everyone is going to make Zeke money or Christian McCaffrey money. There are going to be a lot of guys who are going to have to take a job once all the dust settles for a lot less money than they were expecting to. And, that doesn't even account for the running backs that are going to be available in the draft. We're already talking about Travis Etienne and Chuba Hubbard and, those guys. So there's going to be a lot of running back talent in the mix next year. So we don't even know if Dalvin Cook will be in Minnesota. What if he ends up on a more pass happy team? That now, there's a lot to go into it. I do, wrapping up and going back to where I started. Yes, I do think that he could have gotten more, but the hate that was thrown on this deal makes no sense to me.
So, I mean, I think it kind of is just like a basic, economics in a way. Like every league is different, right? And it just because in a global scale, you can get, market or what people believe is true value for a player. That's not the case when you're in such a small closed market with only 12 people, and maybe only one person still thinks Dalvin Cook is a great buy, and but he's already loaded with running backs, so he doesn't want Dalvin because he knows there's some risk there. And so then you're kind of stuck, and what do? I don't want to be stuck holding a player I don't want.
Mm-hmm.
So you take what you can get, and you're getting a player that you're high on, and in this case, it's Mark Andrews. And, I play in one of those leagues with that scoring system, and, tight ends are really, they're big in that. And I mean, especially if you can get one of those top guys, if you get guys that have 60 or more catches, I mean, that's a huge advantage. You're getting an extra, 45 points added on top in a normal PR league. So, I mean, that's pretty sizable. And so, looking at it just without understanding certain leagues, and then there's the time, the value of your time. Do you want to go? Yeah. Some people don't want to go around and talk to every single team. And when they get a player that they're offered that they're happy with, and, okay, yeah, maybe I can put in an extra 3, 4, 5 hours trying to work this league, and maybe I get an extra second round worth of value. Is that worth it to me? And, for some people it's not, because their lives are busy, and this is, they want to take the best offer they can get at this moment, because this is when they decide they want to get rid of Dalvin Cook. So I get it. And you don't want to leave, you don't want to be stuck with somebody you don't like, because you'll be so mad at yourself if next year, or week 4, Dalvin gets hurt again and you knew it. You know what I mean? Even if, whereas like, okay, you get Mark Andrews and then he ends up doing the whole COVID opt out. Mm-hmm. Well, you knew that going in when you grabbed him, and you were still content with that trade. So, I think people see so much in black and white. And I think that's why a lot of times I struggle even with podcasting, is because I kind of feel like I'm a fence sitter to a point, because I can see different scenarios playing out, and I'm not, very strong in my convictions as to some player being, going to be great. You know what I mean? I could see different routes of this player end up being good or bad. And, I think that's helped me be successful, because it doesn't make me go all in on players that I'm not truly, I have no idea what the result's going to be. And I think that people just need to gain a little bit more perspective and kind of understand that, like a macro and micro economics are a little bit different, and yep. So I just got all my words in like 5 minutes. So my apologies.
No, man. Love it.
Yeah, I'm with you, Bill. There are polls that I refrain from. I won't vote usually in 1 QB or 10 team or fewer polls, because I know I don't have the context for most of those. I think totally in either 2 QB or Superflex. I'm in a couple of TE premium. Love the dynasty piece of it, of course, but yeah, I don't want to throw somebody off just because, on paper at face value, it looks like something could be really skewed. And it's, we all have stories of those trades that looked one way and turned out totally the opposite, over time. And that's the beauty of dynasty, right? Yep. Why we get into this silly game is you either get to reap the benefits, or you get to live with your decisions for a bunch of years and watch somebody, help another guy in your league to championship after championship. But, and then you're getting on the time thing too, not just the time value of my or the value of my time, but, Mark Andrews is probably going to play, if all things work out, 2 Dalvin Cook careers in his lifetime. And with that tight end premium, if you look at the lifetime value of their scoring in that format, I mean, he's tied to a young quarterback who is a top 2 or 3 quarterback, probably number 3 according to Josh. But you got a long future here that he could have a lot of success in that offense and be really productive. So yeah, I will say I've loved some of the positivity that's been put out there on Twitter this week. I think a lot of people are kind of coming around and realizing that, the world's in a tough spot, and let's find some ways to support one another. Let's find some good things that we can do and lift each other up a little bit. And don't lose sight that we do this thing for fun. This has nothing to do with, for most of us, this has nothing to do with whether or not I get to put food on the table for my family tonight. It has nothing to do with, do I stay employed, or, am I a better person or not? It's for fun, and it's community. So have fun with it, respect different views. And that's part of what makes us better people, is being able to listen to some of those views.
Yeah, and I just don't think that like I can never have that strong of an opinion to say this was a terrible trade. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, it's not the best trade if you just look at overall value, but to just be that like certain that you can say that that's a terrible trade, that just blows my mind because I'm not certain. You know what I mean? Like, you're getting 3 shots at somebody succeeding, so maybe 2 of those guys hit, and it's not so bad, But
Yeah.
Well, and you guys both brought up good points. Drew, we should be a little bit more positive, especially because we're playing a game about a game at the end of the day. That's what fantasy football is. So, and we are tracking the statistics of other human beings. We all know human beings are wildly, just all over the place. You can't ever figure out what one person is going to do 100% of the time. Never mind trying to figure out a team of 11 starters and 30 guys on, like, no one's doing it. And I actually said to Dustin in a private chat, I said, bookmark this trade and put this trade up again 8 months from now, a year from now. And I wouldn't be surprised if it flips the other way.
Well, and make sure you do it on the same tweet so that everybody that responded gets to see it. That's the biggest thing is,
And Bill, you're right. You talk about every league that we're in is its own ecosystem. Everyone on Twitter, and I'll use CEH because he's a big time example. He's flooding Twitter right now. Oh, what would it take to get CEH? Well, I would need 3 first-round picks. Okay, that's what everyone on Twitter is saying. But if you own CEH in the league and another owner comes to you and says, hey, what would it take for me to get CEH? And you go, 3 first-round picks. That person might look at you and go, that's never going to happen. Now, if the other 10 guys or 12 guys, 13 guys, however many guys are in your league, say the same thing, CEH isn't worth 3 first-round picks in your league, no matter what everyone on Twitter and on podcasts and everything is saying. If the people in your league aren't going to do it, that's not what he's worth in your league. And all these people that are saying worst trade ever and everything probably would not have been able to craft a better trade. I know Dustin. Bill knows Dustin. Dustin's a pretty damn good dynasty player. Not to say that he's never made mistakes. Not to say that he doesn't get wrong sometimes. But he's very good at this game. If he crafted that deal, it was one of 2 things. It was either, like you guys were saying, the time issue. Either I'm not going to have Dalvin Cook for a whole hell of a lot longer, or I don't want to put an extra 3 or 4 hours into crafting the perfect trade. And that's what I think, personally.
Yeah, and I mean, just think about it this way. And also, people just play completely differently, right? Like, I mean, some people are going to make a ton of trades, and they know certain ones are going to blow up in their face, but they're doing what they believe. So if Dustin's pretty active, so like he might make a bunch of trades, and let's say 7 out of 10 work, and 3 of them blow up in his face, but he can weather that because he's churning it, and keeps doing what he believes is right for his team. And, if that's your only trade this season, that's a whole different, ball game because you might be losing a ton of value without any opportunity to recoup it. And so that's a whole nother dynamic that we didn't even address, that, there's so many moving parts in the game that it's just like, it's so difficult to be uber critical about any decision. Would I have done that trade? Probably not. I think that he left a lot of value on there, but at the same time, I get where he's coming from. You know what I mean? And I probably would have put more work in, because when I have those elite players, or at least what I believe to be elite-ish, at least when they play, I want to make sure I get maximum value. So And also, you were saying that he's running back 4, or kind of that's what you've seen. I just started these Michigan dynasty league where it's all Michigan-based people, where we're doing live drafts, but we're not doing the startup this year live just because of COVID. He was, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4. He was the 5th. Yep. So that's right in. He was selected at 110.
Yeah,
so
and
I took Kittle over him.
I like that. I actually like that. I like that a lot. But again, this is just a game about a game, and honestly, like Drew said it. Mark Andrews is going to play probably twice as long as Dalvin Cook plays, and Sony Michel. For all the talk, Sony Michel and Dalvin Cook are only 6 months apart in age. So, I mean, you're not even. It's not like you got Frank Gore thrown in there who's 38. You have another guy who is 25 and probably has the same shelf life as Dalvin Cook, with probably the very similar injury history. So, I like the trade because of the 1.75. I do agree with Bill. However, I think I would have tried to milk a little bit more out of the deal. But, I mean, Mark Andrews on his own could end up, at the end of the day, paying for this by himself, minus whatever Sony and Miles Boykin end up doing in their career. So, to all the haters, I don't know what you guys are talking about. I don't know what you're talking about. I don't think you guys know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
So
that's one of the phrases that I've come up with that I've used in the past. I'm trying to stop using, is this whole in a vacuum, right? Because there's, like you guys said, there's never going to be a true vacuum of value for this. So you don't know what the roster makeup is, and maybe he's that one. Maybe Dalvin Cook is excess for Dustin, right? And maybe he needs that top end tight end to put him over the top in the next couple of years, because somehow he acquired. Running backs are replaceable, man. You guys said it too. I'm thinking back to some of my older drafts where I got Kareem Hunt at like 109, turned around, got Alvin Kamara at 201, and got Chris Carson at like 205 in the same draft. So maybe Dustin hit a draft like that, and Dalvin is really like his 1C or 1D.
Right.
Great. So I don't know. Have fun with it. I actually gave Dustin a trade to find me a trade in my league for his podcast. So I'm curious to see what he does with my roster this week, and see if I take his advice or not.
and we'll wrap up with this. We also, I wanted to mention this earlier, and it completely slipped my mind. We don't know if Dustin is rebuilding.
Yeah,
I mean, if he's rebuilding, he's got a young tight end, he's got a young lottery ticket wide receiver, and Sony Michel. I mean, it's not a bad haul for a guy who really. Would we be shocked if he's not in the league 2 or 3 years from now? I mean, just with his injury history.
Yep.
I mean, we wouldn't be shocked at all. So, on that note, Bill jumping on for the last few minutes and backing up our boy Dustin. I want to special thank you to Drew today. He filled in. He crushed it. He killed it. If you're watching this and you're listening to this and you have a podcast, you probably want to get this dude on. He's smart and he gets it done. Drew, let the people know where they can find you if you're doing anything, because I think a lot more people need to be following you.
I'm mostly on Twitter at dr_pra. I've been doing this for fun for a long time, and I finally got a little bit deeper into some of the action online this year with John Bosch and the Eliminators, and I was lucky enough to get into the Scott Fish Bowl. And just watching this community do their thing over the last few months has been amazing, and it's something I want to be a part of more. So I haven't started anything formal yet, but I love being able to chat it up with you guys in our Eliminator chat and see what's going on there. I love listening to the different pods that the DAP network has. It's been fun to hear where you guys have been coming from in your approaches. So I appreciate you guys giving me the time to be here, and thanks, Bill, for coming on and cleaning up my mess at the end.
Oh man, I appreciate you taking over. So yeah, that was needed. I was listening to you guys while I was doing stuff around the house, so that's why I was able to chime in earlier. But no, I appreciate it so much.
Yeah, and again, I'm going to say it one more time. Thank you. Make sure you're following Drew at dr_pra. You won't be disappointed. Thank you for everyone who was in the chat. The chat was lit. We had Swirly in there. We had people in and out. It was awesome. If you're listening to us on podcasts, appreciate that too. Remember to subscribe, rate, and review. Tell your friends. Tell them that we have kick-ass guest hosts like Drew here, and make sure that you're hitting us up. And on that note, Bill, we're out of here.
Late.